Cops of Reddit, what strange or obscure laws does your town require you to enforce? I'm a cop in Vermont. Public nudity is legal in most cities, but there's a persistent myth even among fellow officers that you can't take off your clothes in public, so essentially you'd have to walk out of your house naked. Despite no basis at all for it. I've had supervisors try to insist I enforce the myth. Local law against swearing in public. I'd be the biggest hypocrite enforcing that law. Get on the iron ground. Officer Rhino. Give me your gun and badge. In Germany you get imprisoned for up to 10 years if you cause a nuclear explosion but don't hurt anybody or destroy anything. Park ranger law enforcement here. I did a detail in Joshua Tree and asked about strange laws they had. I was told that possession of balloons was unlawful because tortoises like shiny things. Try to eat them and die. Journalist who reports on cops here. Motorcyclists must always have 2 feet on the ground when stopped. Short men beware. The town where I went to college, houses were not allowed to have more than 10 bedrooms. Also every floor of the house had to have a functioning toilet. It was weird because you would go to a house party and there would be a toilet in the middle of the basement. Not in its own room. Out in the open. Usually they were next to the laundry machines because that's where the plumbing was. Windshield wipers are mandatory on your car here. But there's no law that requires a windshield. Actually a law enforced in my town. If more than 3 people would like to live together, 2 of them must be related. This is a college town. So if 5 dudes wanted to live together, at least 2 of them would have to be related. It's not enforced as much my private renters. But property managers and such have to follow the law. Mine has a thing against gold painted living statues. The greater good. Not a cop. But in my home state. If you ride your horse to school, it is the school's responsibility to feed and water it. Every year, people would get together and ride their horses to school and the horses would stay in the football field. We have drive your tractor to school day in my town. I just skipped those days. You'd be late to class and wouldn't make it home until 5. I'm cop. This is a super old law but it never got taken away. Stealing someone's livestock is punished by death. This one can be used too. My entire town outlaws wearing masks with the exception of the night of Halloween. A town around here doesn't allow microwaves in restaurants. This prevents fast food chains and drive-thrus from pushing out the mom and pop guys since the big guys all use microwaves. Cop in Australia. If I catch you with having more than 50 kilograms of potatoes in your possession I will arrest you. Mostly because it would be hilarious. Then they'll unarrest you because who really gives a? Still illegal in Western Australia though. Not a cop. But I was once ticketed for wasting finite resources in AZ. I was speeding. You were wasting entropy. Head of household is supposed to own a gun. I mean they don't really enforce it but we get a lot of recognition for it. Edited to say that I'm not a cop. Just blind and missed the first word. Oops. Until pennies went out of use in my country. You couldn't purchase anything over 25 cents all in pennies. Not a cop. Just grew up poor and a few local shops were sticklers about the law. Though some weren't aware it was a thing at all. I'm a cop. And don't let me catch you wrestling a bear. That's illegal in these parts. Would you really try and arrest a guy if he just took down a bear? Not a cop but I was reporter in a college town when our town council made it illegal to walk around in a turgid state. My friends and I made a bunch of turgid state t-shirts and hoodies and paid for our tuition. I'm not a cop. But my township doesn't allow drive-thrus to have deep fryers. The only food-based drive-thru in my entire township of 65,000 people is one Tim Hortons. My town has a dress code. Anyone caught sagging, wearing their pants below their waist in a gang-like fashion, can be arrested on sight. Edit. Holy. 30 seconds. 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 Holy. Someone please tell me there's a way to clear my message notifications all at once. Semicolon. Removed. Hingham has a law against colored and or flashing Christmas lights on the exterior of any home on Main Street. Solid white lights only. Strippers can't touch you unless you're a close relative. Isn't there a $200 fine for setting off a nuclear bomb in California? There's a law in a city near me that it's illegal for women to buy hats without their husbands on Wednesdays. Not a cop. But whale fishing is illegal here. In the middle of Nebraska. We also have a navy. In Swiss Zermatt it is forbidden to take pictures of street Bernards in front of the Matterhorn. As weird as it sounds. Some poor doggers were held in front of the Matterhorn to take tourist pictures within the state forbid to free the dogs. Now a human in a street. I believe it's still law in Orange County, California to not feed lobster to inmates more than 2 eggs per week. The law stems from when lobster was considered trash and a common bycatch from local ocean fishery. It seems the solution was to use them as protein in the local jails. And the prisoners revolted. Edit. Not a cop. The town I work for, it is legal to openly drink alcohol in all parks. Dogs are not allowed in any park. Not a cop. But you can't buy sell a US flag that isn't made in the USA in Minnesota. It definitely is enforced. Easiest example is Harbor Freight catalogs. Look at the flag for sale in there. I once got a ticket. In front of my own house. At 3 in the morning. My offense? J-parking. Weird South Carolina laws. Horses may not be kept in bathtubs. It is a capital offense to inadvertently kill someone while attempting suicide. Dot. It is perfectly legal to beat your wife on the courthouse steps on Sundays. When my friends and I were 15, we bought some cheap kites at the dollar store and decided to take them with us downtown. We live in Chicago, and fly them. We started trying to fly them by the Art Institute when we got stopped by a cop. He told us that kites were not allowed to be flown anywhere in the downtown area, and if he saw us doing it again he would give us a $250 citation. It seemed kind of weird since Millennium and Grand Park were both in the downtown area. But we didn't argue. Years later I found out that it actually was an obscure law. But a law that was repealed in the 1970s. Turns out we were just fine flying our kites and that cop was just a dick that didn't like seeing us having fun. Not a cop. But living in Buenos Aires. 1. Naming law. Pretty sure it's still a thing here? There's a pre-approved list of names that one can only choose from when naming a newborn. I think it has about 13,800 names on it. But that might be out of date. 2. There is a nationwide ban on alcohol on the night before an election. 3. Couples are required to take blood tests before getting married, for instance. STD while spreadable equals no nups. 4. Prenups and wills are often ignored. Yikes. 5. I guess featherbeds are illegal here. Because such an indulgence induces and encourages lascivious feelings. Cool. Edit. I am retired from the cop game, but I did it for almost 20 years. This is more of a state law and I was not required to enforce it, but one night I had to go back to a house 4 times due to a married couple arguing very loudly. No violence was involved. I advised them on my 3rd visit that maybe it would be best if one of them spent the night somewhere else so they could cool off. Both of them refused to leave, so I asked them to try and settle the situation because I didn't want to have to visit them again, and I went on my way. On my final return visit they were outside in the driveway, and as I was walking up I heard the female admit to sleeping with someone else the night before, so I arrested her for adultery. Which is a misdemeanor in that state. And took her to jail. I didn't have to go back that night. Nothing odd that we're required to enforce. But there's a few here and there that we can if we feel the need. A useful one that went in recently is those odd colored headlights and tail lights. I only give out warnings for it. But it always throws people for a loop being stopped for it. Obligatory not cop. but illegal to hit a Canadian goose with your car. You'll at the very least get slapped with a fine. Have personally watched it happen because the person was too impatient to wait for them to cross. Filipino here. It's pretty much accepted for cops, or anyone for that matter, to just murder people who are suspected to use or sell drugs. Edit. I have to clarify. This isn't really a law in the traditional sense. More like an accepted truth of living in the Philippines. Edit 2. Changed legal to accepted. I can see how my choice in words and oversimplification of the situation can confuse or even upset people. For that, I apologize. It is not my intention. To clarify again, it is very much illegal to commit murder even if the victim is a drug dealer or user. It is just that the authorities tend to turn a blind eye when it comes to investigating such cases. Sometimes simply because of disdain for drug dealers' users. Because it was done by state-sponsored death squads, off the record. Course, or because they were the ones committed the killing themselves. In Toronto you may not drag your dead horse down Yonge Street on a Sunday. You know they had to make that law cause some dickhead had hauled multiple dead horses every Sunday for months. My dad was a cop in a small town in Virginia in the 80s and 90s. He was required to stop any black people he saw past 6 p.m. Public safety. Gonna get buried in the comments, but in my state it's illegal to have sex in any position other than missionary. All sodomy laws were made unconstitutional in 2003 after the Supreme Court rules on the case of Lawrence v. Texas. Your state cannot dictate how you, or any other consensual party, take dick anymore. Not a cop. Or live in a small town. Or know anything about our laws. Are mad lads. Nick, women are legally allowed to be topless in public. Not a cop, but there's a town in my county in Illinois that has a law making it illegal for a bee to fly through town on a Sunday. Mayor, you're under arrest, sir. London still requires licensed cab drivers to carry hay and water for the horses they no longer use. Nobody is ever charged for not having them on board. But the law remains. That's almost the opposite of what the question was asking. In Kennesaw, Georgia, if your name is on the deed of a house. Not a cop, but it's illegal for two people to ride in tandem on a motorcycle unless they're related. Cops have read it. People are on here like I heard a rumor about a friend seeing a cop once and. Not a cop, in my small town it was illegal for blacks to go past Main Street after 5 p.m. Guess who was the only black family in town? It was obviously outdated and not enforced. But it still made me uncomfortable. In Texas, it's illegal to spray paint other people's cars. I grew up in a beach town. During each summer the population tripled with tourists. The locals and tourists would often fight, and one year it got so severe that a person died. From then it became illegal to proudly display the word local on clothing, cars, etc. One guy got fined for having it tanned onto his back using sunscreen. I lived in Lyndon, Washington for a short period of time. Very right-wing religious area. The kind of place where if you were mowing your lawn on a Sunday, the neighbors would come over and strongly suggest you wait until Monday to do that sort of thing. More churches per capita than anywhere else in the country. Anyway, drinking and dancing was strictly illegal if they occurred in the same establishment. Edit. Not a cop. Not a cop. It is illegal to lock the car door in this Canadian town. Isn't it because of the potential need to get into a random car to hide from bears or something? Not a cop. Half of the comments are going to start like this. My state has a law against ice cream in your back pocket, which a lot of other states have surprisingly, because if a horse followed you home, then it would become your horse. So this law is to curb it. Weird. It. Obligatory, not a cop. But it is illegal for women to wear high heels without a permit. How does one obtain a permit to wear high heels? You have to ride a bike with both hands on the handlebars. It's $85 ticket. You can and will be arrested if you don't not close a gate to pasture where livestock is kept. The second one makes perfect sense. You can't let someone's livestock loose and then go, oh, it was an accident. Honestly, it should probably be a ticket plus any damages to the animals while they were loose. Not a cop. Not a cop, but in my town there is a 4-way intersection, and between the hours of 2 PM and 5:45 PM number 1 coming from the west road can make a left. They have to drive 2 blocks down. Most tickets are given to people not from here who miss the street sign above the street light. Tons of not cops. I used to live in PA in college, and there was an obscure law where sorority girls could not live in a house as an official sorority since it was considered by the law to be a brothel, which is also illegal in PA. Edit. I am not a cop. Edit. After even more research, I am still finding conflicting articles. It may be a myth, or it may have morphed into zoning regulations about use and occupancy. Regardless, I choose to believe. Not a cop per se, but I do work at the sheriff's office in Missouri. The editor stated it's illegal for you to get an elephant drunk. So far haven't had to book anyone in for that, but I've only been at it for a few weeks, so fingers crossed. Edit. After a bit of delving into it, looks like it's only for a certain town in Missouri specifically, but I'm almost certain that it's fairly illegal in the rest of the state some way or another. Edit 2. Per se not per se. Cop here. We have discretion and are not required to enforce town ordinances. There are no ordinances I'm forced to enforce. Where I live, 5 or more women living in the same building together is considered a brothel. It's not enforced in the way that if you find yourself with 4 female roommates, the cops are gonna bust down your door. But it makes for interesting repercussions at the university I attend. First of all, the sororities are not allowed to have houses, because the university would be operating a brothel in a legal sense. It also means all the dorm buildings have to be co-ed floors to work around this. The problem with that is the male to female enrollment at my school is about 7-3. So the female dorms are very spread out across campus. Really, it's just one of those laws that was forgotten about and never changed. But it is relevant in ways you wouldn't think of right off the bat. Standard, I'm not a cop, but my state just has weird laws. It is illegal to sleep on top of a refrigerator outdoors. You may not sing in the bathtub, though you do not need a fishing license to fish on your own land. You need a hunting license to hunt on your own land. What is wrong with Pennsylvania? The last one is just because they don't care about you catching all your own fish in your own pond, but they like to keep track of how many deer are hunted in a season. Not a cop, but in high school I went looking for weird laws, and apparently whale hunting is right out in my landlocked city. In Kansas, back in the 90s it was illegal to possess marijuana without a tax stamp. Also, when he got released, an inmate tried to use something from the 1800s that was still on the books. When released from prison, you were to be given 1 horse, 1 rifle, and 1 saddle. Needless to say, he didn't get it and it was quietly removed from the books. In Minnesota, if 3 or more Indians are on the street together, it is considered a gang war party and can be freely open fired upon. Has been used to justify police brutality. How to get away with police brutality with one simple trick. Not a cop. My wife's hometown made it illegal to park on the street overnight. They used the excuse that it was for snowplow access. Even in the middle of summer. Her dad's house had a 2-car driveway and a very full garage. Once the kids were driving, they had to park in their own front yard. In total, they had 4 cars at a house made for 2. When I used to work in London, I learned that pelican touching is expressly forbidden should you happen to find one in a London park, that is. According to the Royal Parks and Other Open Spaces Regulations 1997. You can pet one if prior permission is obtained. Presumably from the park. People need to look up the definition of enforced before posting here. Your mom limited to 3 johns a night. Your mom limited to 3 johns at once. beer stores are only allowed on the sound side of the road. It's a half loop. So basically beer stores are only allowed inside the loop. But to stay away from each other. Attract the most northern customers. The loop is lined with them. But only on the south side. Not a cop but learned about this law in my civics class. In my town on Sundays it is illegal to water your horse in front of a church from 10 AM to 3 PM. Sounds reasonable, right, except it's to keep people from literally watering their horses like plants, not that they can't drink in front of the church. They as in the horses.